Hello. So I'm Zoe. This is my channel, Autistic Nana. Welcome. I've been thinking a lot about would my life have been different if I'd got a diagnosis earlier? I think the sad truth probably is no. So I was 54 when I got my autism diagnosis. And if I think back to my childhood, there's plenty of signs that I was autistic. But I was born in 69 and I was a child in the 70s and 80s. And I was a girl. So I really don't think that getting a diagnosis earlier would even have been possible. Maybe I could have got a diagnosis like some people do. My son was born in 93, and he was clearly autistic. So if there'd been knowledge around and he'd got a diagnosis, I've always known he's very much like me. I think maybe, possibly, if he'd got a diagnosis, say when he was, I don't know, 5 maybe, I would have been 29. Maybe if there had been more knowledge around 1998, I could have got a diagnosis then, but that wouldn't have changed my life. I was already in the position I was in. If I think back at the choices that I had when I was younger, I could probably not have made any different choices. So I went to secondary school when I was 12 and didn't fit in, didn't make friends, just really struggled with everything around me, the size of the building, finding the classrooms, the homework. Everything was quite daunting for me. But I love to learn, and I have many areas of interest that I would really love to learn about. So in theory, going on to university after school would have been really interesting for me, but there is absolutely no way that I could have done that. I didn't even consider it as an option. Couple of reasons. At that time, when I was 18, I was already going out with my boyfriend, who is my husband, and I was totally obsessed with him. Totally obsessed. There's absolutely no way I would have even considered for a moment going away to university and leaving him behind. I had actually dropped out of my maths, physics, chemistry A-levels and reverted to alternate subjects. And that is a very autistic reason that that happened. I was really enjoying A-level physics, really enjoying A-level chemistry. It was getting challenging. I did it for 3 months, but I still enjoyed it a lot. And I really enjoyed A-level maths, but one of the maths teachers used to give us just A4 printed reams of questions to do for homework. And I couldn't keep up. And because I had no friends, I wasn't friends with anyone, I'd had nobody in the class that I was friends with, I just couldn't bear the thought of failing at the homework, not keeping the homework up straight, not doing it correctly. I'm really a perfectionist, so I really wanted this homework to be correct. And I suppose the nail in the coffin for me was quadratic equations. I could follow the really straightforward quadratic equations that we'd used in the lessons. They made total sense to me. I could follow them perfectly. And then the homework we'd been given on them was sheets where they got more and more complex. And I had no one to talk it through with. My parents didn't even understand why I was doing A-levels. They thought as I was a girl, I didn't need an education at all, that I should just leave school and get a job and start contributing to the family income. But I love knowledge and I wanted to learn. Physics at that time was my favourite subject. And it nearly broke me, this maths homework. And it just destroyed me. So I remember coming to the end of that school term around Christmas time, and this is how desperate I was to get out of that situation. I actually arranged to go and speak to the headmistress about it. Don't think I'd ever spoke to the headmistress before. I absolutely hate speaking to people. But I went to see the headmistress. I explained to her that I couldn't cope with the maths. I think looking back, she interpreted that as I didn't understand the maths and therefore I was failing. But it literally was just I couldn't keep up with the homework. And having that pressure on me of trying to do all that homework, I couldn't do it. And it was only that one maths teacher. I think we had 2 different maths teachers, and the other maths teacher's lesson I was fine in. He didn't give us as much homework, and it was absolutely fine. It literally was just the quadratic equations. But anyway, I said I wanted to keep doing physics and chemistry, but the headmistress told me I couldn't do that. I had to do maths if I wanted to do physics. So I ended up just saying, fine, I'll ditch all the lessons and I'll change to religious studies, because I had O-level religious studies and I also had O-level art and design. So I switched to art and design and religious studies. And because I had some gaps in my timetable, I was told I had to do work experience, and I was sent to a jeweller's where I learnt silversmithing. And that was really stressful, but I really enjoyed silversmithing. I really love making things. So that was probably a pretty good experience for me. One day I had to go into London with one of the guys from the shop, and that was really stressful because there was a lot of people on the underground. I found that incredibly stressful, but I managed to get through it. If I wanted to pursue silversmithing as a future career, I would have had to go to college to get a qualification, and the shop wouldn't hire me unless I did that. So another thing that went out of the window because of my autism and ADHD, I suppose, if you look back at it. The autism and ADHD made me obsessed with my boyfriend. Couldn't bear the thought of being away from him for more than a day. And the thought of going somewhere new, somewhere strange, moving away from home, being with loads of strange people in a strange place. The autistic part of me could not even contemplate that as an option. So autism and ADHD were definitely decision makers in my past. As I say, I loved art and design as well. One of my friends that I'd had until the 5th year, she left in the 5th year. She'd always had her work experience at a recording studio. We used to live near Bray Studios, and she always talked about what she was doing there. That sounded amazing. I would have absolutely loved to go and work at a film studio and work on like the special effects and the models and things that they needed at the time to make films. That would have been brilliant. But it never occurred to me to ask her if I could go with her there or do anything like that. That would have been amazing. I could have had an amazing career in special effects. That would have been brilliant. But I could have been a scientist. I absolutely loved science at school, but I couldn't cope with the sensory sensitivity of not keeping this homework dead up straight and not fully understanding the more complex quadratic equations. So I felt like a failure, and I felt like I had to just quit because it was destroying me. There are many, many things I look back on and I think if I'd known I was autistic, if I'd had support, I could have got through that. I could have gone to university maybe, could have got brilliant qualifications and been some kind of scientist. I love computers and technology. I love to build my own computers, replace parts when they need upgrading, stuff like that. I could have had a career. I was actually offered a job when I went for job interviews when I left school. One of the jobs I was offered was to work in an office and deal with all the technology issues that they were having at a factory. When I walked around the factory in the summer, it was a blazing hot day and the factory was so hot. I couldn't bear the thought of being in a building in that heat. And that was literally why I said no to that job, because of how hot the factory was. I couldn't cope with it. So there's so many different times that my autism stopped me from pursuing what maybe could have been a really good career. But I've never been career oriented. I love to learn, but I have no wish to have a career. I never did. And people would say to me as a child, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" No idea. The only thing I ever considered was being an author and writing, because then I wouldn't have to deal with people as much. I could, be at home. That was my ideal solution, was to be at home and just write books. But I have written 2 books, but I've done absolutely nothing with them because I think I have this perfectionism that means I can't bear to finish them completely. They're always on the back burner. I could go through it again and change some stuff. And I hate criticism. So showing them to people that would then criticize them and want to change things, that would just be horrible. So it's really difficult. So that's another career path that being autistic would just put a stop to, really. So I just ended up doing office jobs, working in a bank and then working in a council, and having no aspirations to go anywhere or do anything further in those places either. Literally chose those jobs because 9 to 5, no weekend work. That was my thought process. So I look back at my life and I think if I'd known I was autistic, if I had some support, maybe I could have done something greater than being an office clerk. But The reality is, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there really wasn't that much support for autistic people. There wasn't much knowledge about how being autistic affected your life. There weren't many girls being diagnosed as autistic. And the reality is, if I'd known, it would have just been a label that I was given that nobody else understood. I was picked on at school anyway. And I mean, really, that was because of my autistic traits. So putting a label on it wouldn't have made any difference. The teachers wouldn't have supported me more. They might even have thought that I was struggling more than I actually was. They might have put me in lower groups. I don't know. But yeah, that wasn't an option. It wasn't an option to actually get support for being autistic at that time. If I look back at my school life, I could think back to people now that I think, yeah, you were quite likely autistic, but nothing would have been done. Nobody knew. There were no autistic girls in my girls' school, and that's the official record of when I was at school. But clearly, there were autistic girls in my girls' school. They just weren't recognised. Neither was I. So, getting a late diagnosis has given me pause for thought. It's given me regret. But because of when I was born and when I grew up, an earlier diagnosis wouldn't have helped me in any way, as far as I can see. I mean, I'm not dead yet, so I could still maybe achieve something in my life. I have started a YouTube channel. Maybe that'll help someone. That would be good. Although I don't have a particular fondness for humanity as a whole, helping individuals is something that I like to do. Maybe my YouTube channel will do that. Who knows? I don't know if anyone will ever actually see the end of this video, but if you do, and if you've got any words of wisdom you'd like to put in the comments below, please do. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rambling today, and that'll be the end of this video, so comment, like if you want to, but that's it for now. Thank you very much, and goodbye.